Alright, guys, so we are going to start talking about the Aztecs now. So we finished the Mayas and we are going to move on to the Aztecs. Um, so the Aztecs supposedly wandered for hundreds and hundreds of years looking for a place to settle because they believed that their sun god, Quetzalcoatl, had told them that when they found the place where the eagle spreads its wings and eats the serpent, they would know that that's where they're supposed to settle. So it took them a couple of hundred years, and they finally, I guess, saw that or thought they saw it. Um, and so they settled on a swampy island called Lake Texcoco. And they built a city called Tenochtitlan, and it became the largest city in Mesoamerica with over 400,000 people, which then was a lot. Um, and so, because it's an island, the farming thing is going to be a little bit difficult. So, they invented this super cool thing where it's called floating gardens or chinampas. And what they would do is they would build like a what you guys would think of as like an above ground garden, kind of like a pallet, and then they would put the soil and everything like that on there, and they would plant on that on there, and then they would attach like strings from the pallet and have weights on the bottom to the bottom of the lake. So it's like they had all these little floating gardens, and that's how they farmed. So that was something that was very innovative that had definitely never been seen before. Politics. So again, we've got a king who believes that he's descended from the gods, um, same as the Mayans, but the kings were actually appointed by a council of priests, soldiers, etc., and they were appointed. Appointed means chosen, like you're picked by somebody. Like, I'm going to appoint you to moderate the chat. Not elected, as in everyone votes, but I'm deciding that this is what you're going to do. So this council would appoint them. Of course, it had to be someone from the noble family, but it didn't have to be like the son of the current king, etc. And kings were expected to prove themselves worthy to be king by leading troops into battle. Um, Conquest was very, very important to the Aztecs. They war and all these kinds of things were that was sort of what they did. So of course their king is going to be expected to lead that, I suppose. So they were constantly, at war, conquering other lands and taking over other lands. Their social structure is basically everything that we've seen in the past. You've got, of course, your king at the top. Here, you've got your king at the top here, and then you've of course got the royal family, and I kind of put that over here in with king. But you've got the nobles, and those are going to be your priests, your officials, and warriors are actually included in the class of nobles. Then you've got the merchants, who are the people who are skilled at something. So traders, craftsmen, they have a specific skill, like artisans. The commoners made up the majority of the people. Most people were commoners, and they're just kind of like your everyday farmers and laborers and just normal people. And then at the very bottom, you have the slaves. Get that okay. All right, religion. So, like the Mayans, the Aztecs were also polytheistic. They had more than one god, and they saw death as honorable, similar to the Mayans. The only difference with the people who they considered to be worthy of an afterlife was the women who died in childbirth, like the Mayans, captives or prisoners of war who were sacrificed to the gods, and then they also believed that soldiers who died in battle um, deserved to have an afterlife, and by having afterlife, that meant not go to the underworld. So they believed that everyone except these types of people went to the underworld at death. So for economics, chinampas, those are the floating gardens. That's how they cultivated their agriculture, and that's how they got what they needed to trade. Mainly agriculture is what they traded. That was their main resource. And then, of course, corn, just like the Mayans, was kind of their staple crop, their most important thing. Achievements. So the Aztecs are the first to build bridges, and that was because they lived on an island. So that was necessary. Of course, the floating gardens, they had a calendar very similar to the ones that the Mayans created. And they also helped kind of create chocolate like the Mayans did. So they did not mysteriously disappear. What happened to the Aztecs is Christopher Columbus, who was trying to prove that the world was flat and all this kind of stuff, he ended up discovering their civilization, Hispaniola, and all that kind of area. And so what he does is he brings all these spices and things he finds and takes them back to Spain, where he's from. And he comes back with all these conquistadors, which are the Spanish soldiers, to basically invade. So this guy named Hernan Cortez is kind of the leader of this whole, them invading this whole shebang. So he comes in and invades. The Aztec emperor at the time was Montezuma. So if you've ever heard of like Montezuma's Revenge, if you've ever been anywhere like Mexico or anything like that, they'll tell you don't drink the water there, don't open your mouth in the shower, that sort of thing, because their water is different and you can get sick, and they call it Montezuma's Revenge. That's where that comes from. So Montezuma had this like weird dream premonition thing. And so he knew supposedly that Cortez was coming. And Cortez kind of tricked him into meeting with him. Like, hey, I just want to have a meeting with you. You know, we're just going to kind of work this out, blah, blah, blah. So he fell for it and went to meet Cortez. And then they took him hostage and defeated the Aztecs. And that was the end of the Aztecs. So make sure that all this is written down in your notebook. Your Pear Deck questions have been answered. And the next one that we will start is going to be the Incas.